Welcome to REI. Thank you so much for coming out tonight for our second Women in the Outdoors panel discussion. My name is John. I work for REI Outdoor Programs, and I'm thrilled that you braved the horrible Denver traffic to be here. We're assuming that people are going to keep kind of coming in sporadically, so if there's room near you, please allow someone to sit next to you. Couple of things. Kim, our delightful facilitator, is going to intro the panelists and our nonprofits in the back. I first want to thank Yeti for being one of our sponsors of this tonight. If everybody grabbed one of these Rambler mugs, they actually donated those for this event. They were kind enough to do that, so we're excited about that. I also want to mention Lady Justice Brewing. Hopefully you were able to fill your Yeti Rambler with delicious beverage from Lady Justice. I asked them for a couple of bullet points, and they sent me a dissertation, so bear with me for a second. All right. Lady Justice Brewing Company is a woman-owned and operated philanthropic organization that brews and sells beer. All profits over cost are donated through a grant-making process to Colorado-based community organizations that promote the status and opportunity of women and girls. They actually just did their first grant round this year. I think it was in April, and Women's Wilderness was one of the recipients. So, great organization. We're excited to partner with them. Their beer is available through the purchase of community-supported brewery memberships. So they're a membership-based brewery. Founders Betsy, Jen, and Kate are here tonight. Please, support them, say hello. And as a part of supporting them, we have these postcards. There's a couple things on your seats when you sit down. There is an REI Outdoor School postcard there if you want to check that out. We run classes and programs all over Colorado, many of which are women-only classes or focused on women, whether it's mountain biking, wilderness survival, climbing, whatever it might be. If you have one of those postcards, and on the front there is an REI like sunset sticker, if you have one of those, raise it up in the air. Nice. There's a couple of them in there. You have won a Lady Justice membership. Woo! So, if you have one of those cards that has one of those stickers, later on when we have a chance to mingle and go check out the nonprofit partner tables, take that back to the Lady Justice table. They will give you a certificate for your membership and tell you how it all works. At the end of the night, we also have some other great giveaways, including some more Lady Justice memberships. So, thanks to them for being here. If your glass gets empty, please feel free during the discussion to get up and fill it up. Do you want me to talk about your, yeah? You got it? Fantastic. All right, I'm going to hand it off to Kim. Kim O'Malley, our delightful facilitator. Kim is the Colorado Program Manager for the nonprofit organization Girls Leadership. She is a youth development specialist who utilizes sport and the outdoors as catalysts for personal growth and leadership cultivation. She's been actively engaged in the outdoor community for the past 20 years as an outdoor professional, an avid trail runner, an ultramarathoner, coach, teacher, and a mom of 2 nature-loving kids. Again, thank you all for being here, and Kim.
Thank you, John. All right, I'm super excited to be here. Thank you to REI for hosting this event. As John said, I am the Colorado Program Manager for Girls Leadership, and our mission is to equip girls with the skills to exercise the power of their voice. And we are a Force of Nature grantee this year, and our newest program is aimed at getting middle school girls outside while they develop their internal skill sets to build confidence, resilience, and authenticity. If you want to get this program into the hands of a middle school girl that you know, you can visit our table on the back to receive a toolkit to figure out how to do that. We're joined tonight by some amazing organizations who are supporting our community. So if you look back there, we've got Big City Mountaineers here tonight, Women's Wilderness, Vita Mountain Biking, the Girls Athletic Leadership School of Denver is here, so be sure to stick around after our discussion tonight. Visit the table, see what they're all about. They're working really hard to support girls and women locally. So someone recently asked me, how did you get into the outdoors? Like, when did you realize it was going to be a big thing in your life? And initially, I thought the answer to that question was when I was a high school cross-country runner, hitting the trail, being outside, moving my body. And it wasn't until recently that I realized that that connection happened at a much earlier age. I was not from a family that grew up camping or going outside. And in fact, there was one particular day where I realized the relationship that I was going to have with outdoors. It would come to define what the outdoors meant to me in my life. And that day happened when I was 6 years old. So as I look back on that particular day, I come from a big family. I have 5 brothers, and I'm the only girl. So on this day, I was trailing after my big brother and a group of his friends on the way to the park in the hopes that they would let me play baseball with them. And it was a hot, humid, sticky Midwest day. And the boys all decided to take their shirts off to cool off. And they took their shirts off and they stuck them in the back of their shorts. And trailing behind, this seemed like a really good idea, like to cool off. Being a couple years younger, so I go ahead and I take my shirt off and I stick it in the back of my shorts. And I'm cooling off and we're going to the park. And my brother and his group of friends turn around and immediately they start laughing and pointing at me and they're in hysterics while my brother is mortified. And in humiliation, he throws his baseball bat, or baseball mitt, not the bat, that would be bad, the mitt at me, and he yells, "What are you doing? You can't take your shirt off. You're a girl. Get out of here." And not really understanding at all what I had done wrong, I still felt this grave sense of shame come over me. So I turned with my t-shirt in hand, and I ran home sobbing. And the whole way, I was prepared to tell my mom how mean and unfair that group of kids had been to me. But when I got home, I was met with a really similar response. My mom saw me with my shirt off, and she said, "What are you doing with your shirt off? You get in the house right now and you put your shirt right back on." And I'm sobbing, and she's saying, "Girls cannot take their shirts off." And I'm saying, "But I didn't do anything wrong." And she just wrestled with me to get my shirt back on, and I was angry. So I bolted out the back door, and I ran to a creek down the street. It was a place that I would go often because there wasn't a lot of space to be alone in my house. So I'd always head down to this creek, and I would play in the dirty and muddy creek bed, collect frogs and other creatures. And it was this great place to find some quiet in my life. So I ran down to my creek, and there I sat crying, not knowing what I had done wrong, but really feeling like I had lost something. And as I sat there crying, thinking about what had just happened, it was so disempowering because at that point I realized that there were going to be rules that were different for girls than for boys. And this was the first time this was really explicit to me. And I didn't know what to do about it. And I didn't know if I could do anything about it. But as I sat there, a calm started to come over me. I started to notice the frogs in the creek bed. And I noticed that shame started to slip away. And as I sat there, I started to feel a little bit more like myself. I started to feel a little bit stronger. And so in my own private protest, I stood up and I took my shirt back off and I threw it in the muddy creek and I stomped on it over and over. And as I stomped on my t-shirt over and over, I started to feel a little bit stronger, and I started to feel myself gain back a little bit of that power I felt that I had lost. And so I took my muddy t-shirt and I threw it over my shoulder And I walked back home in defiance as a shirtless and once again proud 6-year-old girl. And it was that day that would set the course for my relationship with the outdoors. To this day, when I get outside, I can still feel that same sense of resilience and strength, sometimes defiance, and it is the place that I go to gain a better sense of myself. Maybe you feel that way too. Maybe that's why you're here tonight. Or maybe you're just here for the free beer, which that works too. And I say cheers to that. So I want to welcome you here tonight. I think this is an amazing group of panelists. I'm super excited that they are here. They are out there in the world as trailblazers, community builders, and innovators. So I'm really excited to welcome our panel of these amazing local women who are making waves and supporting girls and women locally here in Colorado. So let's welcome them as a whole. Okay, so I would like to start by introducing over here on this end, this is Courtney DeWalter. She's a professional Solomon-sponsored ultra-distance trail runner, the 2-time winner of the Run Rabbit Run 100-mile race in Steamboat Springs. She also holds a 24-hour American record, running 155.39 miles in 24 hours. In 2016, she was the 3rd Ultra Runner of the Year and recently the overall winner of the Moab 200, although it was actually a 238-mile race, in which she took the overall win 10 hours ahead of the 2nd place male finisher. Give her a hand. Ow! I also just have to add, up until this year, before going pro, she was a full-time middle school science teacher at the Girls Athletic Leadership School. So managing that day job too. Next to Courtney, we've got Liz Wolfson, who is the Chief Visionary Officer of the Girls Athletic Leadership Schools, Inc. It's a game-changing educational model focused on positive gender identity and integrative movement. This model was born from the feeling that educational opportunities for girls in America were insufficient to match the reality of growing up in today's world. The 4th child in a family of competitive athletes, she was reared on a backyard basketball court where she learned how to use both hands for layups and to never let her brothers knock her down. Welcome, Liz. Okay, over here in the middle, we have Sarah Raleigh. She's a professional mountain bike racer who races in the races pro in the enduro circuit. She's also the co-founder of Colorado's first women's-only mountain bike race, the Betty Bike Bash, and the Vita Mountain Bike Series, the up-and-coming women's mountain bike clinic movement. She owns and operates Mountain Grown Marketing, LLC, and Vita Events, Inc., which specializes in marketing and promoting competitive and non-competitive events, integrated marketing communications, brand and image development, advertising, and public relations for such events like the Mountain States Cup, USA Cycling Mountain Bike National Championships, Betty Bike Bash, the annual Yeti Tribe Gathering, and the Big Mountain Enduro Series, and the Golden Giddy Up. So let's welcome Sarah. Thanks for being here. Okay, I'd like to introduce Emily Isaacs. She is a teacher, outdoors woman, a therapist, and community leader who loves to mentor women and girls who are learning to find their strength in the outdoors. She's been teaching climbing and outdoor skills in a professional setting for almost 15 years, including at Outward Bound and the National Outdoor Leadership School. She has been with Women's Wilderness since 2013 and is currently serving as the executive director. Rock climbing has been a key part of Emily's growth in the outdoors, as it has been a life practice that offers deep friendships, the chance to work with fear, the opportunity to make real-life judgment calls about safety and risk, and a place to develop trust in self and others. Welcome, Emily. And here we have Lori. Let me try a stab at your last name. Let me know how I do. Tewksbury? Tewksbury. All right, so here's Lori. She is the Chief Operating Officer at the Outdoor Women's Alliance. It's through the lens of human-powered adventure that OWA works to inspire confidence and leadership in women of all ages, believing that strong women have the power to build healthy communities and quite literally change the world. She travels and plays in the mountains as much as possible to mountain bike, split board, and camp while working from coffee shops across the country. Welcome, Lori. So this is a group of amazing people, and I just want to say thank you for being here, and thank you all for coming out tonight. So I'd just like to start by asking the question, we're here tonight to talk about the connections among women, leadership, authenticity, to movement and the outdoors. So help us connect those dots and give us an example from your experience that illustrates this connection in your life or the work that you do. And you have mics that are shared, so don't all jump up at once and grab it. But please pass it as you. Would anyone like to start?
Oh my, I won. Hi, it's super impressive, the amount of people that are here. So congratulations to Kim and REI. I think we all just got random emails and we were like, sure, we'll do it. And then we got one yesterday that said 220 people were coming. And I'm sure I'm not alone when I was like, oh, okay. So I showered. But besides that, thank you. So besides that, interestingly enough, I think that I represent on the panel the idea that I believe that we don't have systems of development for how our children grow up or how we grew up that encourages us to understand that it is our given right as humans, and as girls, we can get specific there, to utilize kind of the earth or the outdoors as a part of our playground. And so I got into the business of saying that after-school programs and summer camps would never be enough to change a generational shift of what it would take for all of our daughters and sons, irrespective of background, meaning whether you're poor or privileged, that you would have the opportunity to understand that this is a natural way in which we should all be in the world. So I got involved in education to say we can do it differently. We can create a system where kids learn to be in their bodies not only physically, but socially, emotionally, and relationally, to say, I get to live in the world the way that I feel most comfortable. And so what we teach at our schools is what we call embodied leadership. And so it just gets students comfortable being in their bodies as a methodology of development as a human. And therefore, once we get them comfortable in doing that, we can start to say, hey, we got this really cool science teacher and she likes to run, so why don't you try that? Or we can work with the Women's Wilderness Institute and say, hey, they have this great program, why don't we get some of you signed up for that? And so we spend our time teaching the idea that leadership is something that you embody as a human, and it's not a course that you take, it's not some sort of standards that you have to pass and be certified, that to be a leader you get to own your choices as a human who is embodied, which includes how you move in the world and what kind of movement works for you. And through that, we then get to make our choices of how we experience the world. And then in our curriculum, that includes the utilization of the outdoors, because there's only so much you can do indoors. And if you live in Colorado, wow. But only wow for some of us, not wow for all of us, right? 50% of our population, there's no wow anywhere. And so if we can change the systems in which we educate our students and all of our children, we believe that we can get to the place that outdoors is accessible to everyone and everyone understands that their system just needs it. It's a human need to be in our bodies. It's a human need to be outdoors. It's a human need to experience the world. And so that's our take on it, and that's how we build our schools, not only in Denver, but in other places around the country.
Thank you, Liz.
So is this on? All right. When I first started mountain biking in 2005, one of my first experiences was taking a dirt series clinic. And I saw all the coaches up in front of us, and I was like, wow, these women are super women. They're not even human. Like, watch them on a bike. They have so much finesse and fitness. And I was 18 years old, still in school, and I went back to my sophomore year in college and joined the mountain bike team. And through racing on the collegiate level, I started to look up to a lot of women who are racing professionally. As Julie Furtado's name just came up over here as a racer back from the 90s, Kelly Emmett, Georgia Gould, an Olympian. And as I moved through my career racing, I got to know some of these women as personal friends. And so relating this to the Vita Mountain Bike Series, we hire professional female coaches to work with our participants. And I can relate to the participants when they look up at these women and think, wow, they're super women. And I always encourage our coaches to introduce themselves of what they do off the bike. A lot of them are mothers, they're teachers, they're professionals in completely unrelated fields, and our participants find a way to relate to them in one way or another, maybe through a job or where they were from, or hey, we both grew up in the Midwest. Now we know where the real mountains are. So, you know, we at the Vita Mountain Bike Series, we lead by example, and we really like to bring our coaches, as amazing as they are, to the level of the participants, because when you see somebody that you can relate to, you adapt this, if she can do it, I can do it mentality. And that's something that's very strong with the Vita Mountain Bike Series, is that our coaches are leading by examples, which trickles down to our assistant coaches and our ambassadors. And so through the last few years, we've had participants move into the coach role and progress through our program. So what we're hoping for is for participants to realize that even though if they're completely new to the sport, it doesn't take long, and it's all about the baby steps that they could eventually be up there on the same platform as our coaches.
Thank you, Sarah.
I just wanted to tag off of what Liz said, because it really resonated with me. So I'd say that Women's Wilderness also operates off of that foundation that Liz was talking about from GALS. Just a little background about us in case you haven't heard of us. We have been in the Front Range for 20 years, and we have a women and girls program, two separate programs. And in our girls program, we aim to be incredibly accessible, especially for that program. We've actually never turned away a girl in need with our scholarships. And that's something we're hugely proud of. We aim to provide scholarships for about 2/3 of our participants. And we're offering programs that really seek to develop courage, confidence, and leadership skills through outdoor experiences in a supportive environment. So I guess I have a little anecdote to relate to this question. A course that I went out on, a women's course, was a one-day canoe trip, actually out on the St. Vrain. And the incredible thing about that, it's just sort of east of Boulder and in agricultural land, and no one goes on that river. And there are actually eagles and turtles and fish and all sorts of incredible wildlife out there that no one really witnesses. So we do little canoe trips on that river. And I was on an all-women's course, women ages sort of mid-20s to early 60s. And at the end of the trip, several of the women said, you know what? Like, if there were men here, I wouldn't have ended up in the back guiding the canoe. And looking around, I know how that's true for myself as well. Even after 20 years of working professionally outdoors all year round, sleeping on the dirt more than a bed, that I still sometimes find the way these cultural stories are so intrusive and pervasive and quiet sometimes, and they get me. And so to have a space where all women or all girls can be together, and there's no choice, you're gonna be in the back seat guiding. You're going to be the one looking at you know, looking at the map and deciding which way to go. You're going to be looking towards your leaders who are backing the trailer and attaching the trailer hitch, and we're leading the trad climb. That's just incredibly empowering. And so I think, to me, that's how authenticity, leadership, women, the outdoors, it just all connects. It's about space, you know, that there's space to try things, that there's space to be the one in the back of the canoe. There's space to be the one, actually, I'm gonna try lead climbing now. Like, no one else is, there, it isn't crowded. The field isn't crowded with men already stepping up because they've been enculturated to say, yeah, I'll try it. And women kind of hang back and watch. And so I think that that's the power of these female-only spaces.
I taught for 6 years at the Girls Athletic Leadership School because I believe in the mission that Liz was talking about, where when you're moving, that's when you feel your most authentic self. And seeing 8th grade girls do that, a lot of you might remember being in 8th grade. It's awkward and weird, but when you'd get them playing these silly games and moving their bodies, like, then they started shaking off the masks or like shells of what they're supposed to be like. I mean, there's nothing you're supposed to be like when you're wheelbarrow racing. Like, you're just supposed to go. So I got to see it from that perspective, but now in my running career, I every day feel so grateful to be out on those trails, like feeling like the purest version of myself. I mean, snot dripping down my face, and it's not pretty a lot of time, but there's like me and my body and my brain and a goal, and then mountains and trails and the outdoors to be my company for that. And I think moving is when I am my most authentic, and from being a teacher, that's when I saw it as the kids' most authentic selves as well, which then just bleeds into the leadership aspect for me, because leaders that I've looked up to and worked with before have, the ones I looked up to were the ones who are being their most authentic selves. So it's all totally intertwined, like you were saying.
And I think this is super similar to what we do with Outdoor Women's Alliance. Our goal is to create safe, supportive, strong communities of outdoor women. And we do this through technology. We try to connect women here locally in the Front Range, but across the country and in Canada, and just connect women who are into the same outdoor activities. And so we've got volunteers leading activities and events, and we work with outfitters to have educational clinics and skill sessions and stuff. But our biggest goal is just to connect women with one another so that we can get outside with one another, because as they mentioned, and I think as a lot of us have probably all recognized, it's just different. And it's just different when you go outside with all women. I think there's a lot less competition. We're way more supportive. We're interested in watching people learn and improve, and we're giving each other space to kind of just be comfortable with ourselves and be comfortable with kind of whatever our goal at hand might be. So with OA, and I think with everyone up here, we all recognize that we kind of just need to create this environment and have the space in order to be authentic and comfortable and have room to grow and become stronger.
Well, thank you all for those responses and input. You know, a couple of you have mentioned the value of this all-female community. And I'd like just to invite anyone else to add to that. You know, why just women and girls? Like, what about the boys? What about the men? You all represent or have been part of organizations that have this focus. You know, and recently the Boy Scouts have opened their door to girls, but the Girl Scouts have held firm that it's important to continue serving just girls. So I'd like to see if anyone wanted to add to this. All right. So why just women or female identified, you know, and girls? Like, help us wrap our heads around that.
I feel strongly about this. So something that I like to talk about often, so I've worked for Outward Bound and for the National Outdoor Leadership School, and there were amazing things to gain from both of those experiences. I met my husband at Outward Bound. That that was something I gained.
Congratulations.
But also just tons of experience really feeling confident and getting to work in wilderness settings. So props to both those organizations. And Outward Bound was founded by a man to help young boys survive in war. That's why it was founded. And it developed from there. And then Knowles was founded to create instructors for Outward Bound School by a man, and all men. And I think that there's just something about like a story where you have a founding woman, you know, the mother of the organization, that's so powerful. You know, we were founded by Laura Tyson, an outdoor educator and therapist in 1998. And I meet with her regularly, and she's a mentor and role model for me. And that just means a lot, sort of coming from the big container. And I think once you have those founding stories, it's really hard to shake. You know, they're in the foundation, not to be really repetitive, of the institution. And so that's one thing that I think is really important about all women's orgs, all girls orgs, is just having a different context. So you can really explore, how can we shift the dominant paradigm? What is women's leadership? Like, from the start, to begin to explore what's sort of in the periphery, I think, in our culture.
I don't want to comment on the Girl Scout, Boy Scout thing because it makes me angry. So I'm just going to let that one go. I think that...
Thanks, Liz.
You're welcome. There are political contexts, there are practical human development contexts, and then there are communal contexts. And so it's hard for me within a, working within a public school system to answer it simply. So I'll just quickly do all three. We just opened our first boys' school. We have 3 girls' schools and now 1 boys' school. It took me a while to come around to opening the boys' school. But I think what we're here talking about in general applies to humans. Being in your body, going through some sort of embodied education as a child, a youth, and a young adult, and then living in an embodied way. The research is showing that the women who are breaking barriers across industries, 96% of the women in the C-suite played organized sports. I mean, we're not talking about sports here, we're talking about movement and health, but we see the outcomes of that for women in the world. And so I'd be lying if I said I got into the business of education for any other reason than to work on the issues of gender equity. I never worked a day in a school until I opened one. Courtney and people in the back can attest to all the mistakes I made because of that. But I believe that we must change systems in order to change generations. But to put that into context, it is clear that the young girls, the research shows that by the time they hit middle school, and middle school can be 5 to 8, can be 7 and 8, 9, depending on where you live in the country, they fall off a social, emotional, and academic ledge in co-ed environments. And so that research is the basis for what we started. And at the same time, I would simply say all kids, boys and girls, need sacred space to fully become themselves before that other social, emotional, hormonal stuff takes over. Because we've seen the outcomes of co-ed schools, and so maybe we should try something different that allows us all sacred space. And I think we need sacred space whether we're young or whether we're old. That being said, as a person who tried to shift, starting with women, to include boys in the base assumptions of movement boosts cognitive achievement for everybody, that's brain science, it was hard talking to funders and community members about something that worked for girls, that it would also work for boys. And so just my funny way of ending that piece is I now have a daughter who is in 6th grade, so she is in our schools here in Denver. But I was in New York trying to sell the concept because it costs a lot of money to build schools. And they said, we don't understand, we feel like you're abandoning women and girls by saying we're going to open schools for boys. And so for me, this is the political context. I truly believe that gender equity will come when men treat women equally and women feel fully themselves and they treat men equally. And so I started a boys' school so that my daughter, we'll just go here, assuming she's heterosexual, she has some pretty emotionally intelligent boys to have sex with and marry, right?
Right on, Liz.
That's the political context. That was the political context. Oh my God, no one tell her I said that out loud in front of 220 people. Okay, the communal context is, simply put, there will be better civil discourse when kids grow up inside their bodies. Women will fully take their space with their voices. Men will fully take their space with their voices, and they will actually have something to talk about with one another. The way the social dynamics work now and are recorded is that girls will kowtow mostly to boys. I mean, that's an overgeneralization, but I think we all get it. We need to give girls something to be embodied with so that when they meet boys or girls, whoever they're socializing with, they're having actual conversations that have an impact and influence in the world and in their own lives. And so that's why I believe sacred space is important.
To follow up on that, sorry, it's a little bit hard. But you know, just kind of going back to what I know and with BDEN or mountain bike clinics is, I find that women speak a different language than men, and especially when it comes to explaining how to do something. Raise your hand if it could be mountain biking, it could be skiing. You choose a sport where maybe a guy friend or your significant other has told you, just do it. Just get behind the saddle. You just follow me. I can't tell you how many times I've been told, just follow me. And I'm like, well, I can't see what my landing's going to look like. How is it going to feel? That's usually what I'm most concerned about. And then talking with other women, I get that sense as well. So I feel like being in an all-women environment, it allows us to articulate more clearly and continue to ask questions, because it might not register the first time because we're all different learners. Some of us learn best by example, some of us learn by hearing how to do it, some of us learn by just watching it and then doing it ourselves. So I think being in an all-women's environment, it's important because it gives us the time and the space to develop that. But going off of Kim asking, like, well, what about the men and the boys? Where are they at in this? How many of you have been drugged into a sport because of a significant other, friend, husband, boyfriend? So I think it takes the dynamic of having somebody, and it could be that male counterpart, or it could be your girlfriend, to introduce you to a sport and get you out of your comfort zone. I do think that in an all-women's environment, we have the space to thrive, instead of feeling like, okay, we're always just gonna be in back of the boy train. We're gonna have to just walk over that because I don't have time to session it because they're gonna be waiting that much longer for me. So it gives us the ability to clearly find ourselves and to develop ourselves out on the trail.
We got that one covered? All right. So, you know, this was mentioned a bit, but when girls hit middle school, we see this drop in confidence and congruently a drop in satisfaction with their bodies. While 86% of fifth grade girls describe themselves as confident, this percentage drops to 60% by ninth grade. This is also the age when girls tend to drop out of sports at twice the rate of boys. So in your experience, what has getting outdoors or moving your body or being an athlete done for your own confidence in the way that you feel about your body?
I can start, I think, on this one. First, I think I tried every single team sport there ever was, and I dropped out of all of them. And I didn't know why at the time. I was always interested in trying the next thing. I just never truly felt at home with it. And then I moved to Colorado, and now I do everything. And it's pretty awesome. And I think I think getting outside just changes your perception with your body quite a bit. It's way less about what you look, obviously. We're certainly not bringing mirrors, like full-blown mirrors outside of our tent, leaning up against the tree to see what we look like in the morning. Sometimes we'll ask someone else how we look, but we roll out of the tent just super dirty. And we're fine with that. And it just doesn't matter as much when you're outside. And I think for me and a lot of our members is The perception about our bodies have changed because we're now more worried about whether our body can get us up that mountain, whether we're feeding it properly so that we can get to our next goal or finish the full day of mountain biking. And for me, it's also to not get hurt. So to kind of stay like within what I'm capable of, feeding it, and just, I don't care what I look like anymore. And it's just kind of, I don't know, just changed the perception of using my body as a tool because I know it works, and trying to maintain it so that it continues to work.
I'd say ditto all those things as Lori, and then to cap it off, becoming a mom really shifted things of like, oh wow, I do not have time to worry about this. So between going outside and having a young daughter, it's just like, we got those bases covered.
In high school, I oscillated from being a ski racer to being an endurance runner, and those are two very different body types. And so when I found mountain biking, it was that perfect balance where it was the combination of strength, fitness, and finesse. And so no longer were my workouts measured by calories burned and how I was going to feel when I looked in the mirror. It was more about how many watts was I producing, how fast was I getting up that hill. And so for me, being outdoors and becoming an athlete, I started to fuel my body for the adventure ahead or for the race, and I was no longer concerned about like, did I get my workout in, and what does that mean of what I can eat today or tomorrow? It really became more about the goals that I was looking to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, nailing it over here. I think this ultra running stuff has showed me the same sorts of things where it becomes more about being out there conquering a goal and less about like what I look like doing it or what my body looks like doing it. And I think we are all way more capable than we're currently giving ourselves credit for, and need to just like find our passion and go after it 100% and see what happens, because our bodies are amazing, and more importantly, I think our brains are really incredible, and we can overcome so much, and we can achieve those goals if we set our mind to it and then put in the work to get there. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be running an absurd amount of miles. But yeah, our bodies are amazing.
What's an absurd amount of miles, Courtney?
And doing these ultra marathons, the human spirit is really powerful. Should I keep going?
Yeah, give me another one. So jumping into this a little bit deeper, it's a process to get to that point where you have that relationship with your body. So what would you all say to either that middle school girl or maybe someone in this room who says, that's just not me. It's not my body. I'm not an athlete. I'm not outdoorsy. I wasn't born that way. What do you say?
So I don't know. I'm not great at kind of talking to people and feelings. I don't know what those are. But I
do you want a hug?
But for me, and this happens a lot with my friends, I just show them. So take them out on something easy-ish, push them a little bit, like watch them and see where you can push and where you can kind of, I don't know, I think people can do a lot more than they expect they can. And so I kind of just show instead of explain, and at the end of the day, you don't even have to explain it. They've recognized that they are an athlete and that they can do it, and it's just kind of finding that right activity for them and pushing them at the right moments and not pushing too hard.
I would say that strength doesn't have a body type. When I'm out there, I've entered myself into a few Enduro World Series races, and the women who are just racing at the top level, frankly, kicking my ass. Some of them come from a cross-country background, some of them come from a downhill background, some of them are, ex-ski racers, some of them picked up a bike 2 years ago, and I'm looking at them like, what did I miss 12 years ago? So it's really more than 90%. 96% of being athletic, it all comes from your mental game. So you don't have to be a certain something to be athletic. Being athletic is really just getting out there, and it's the proficiency at the sport, and that really just comes from consistency and a love and dedication and perseverance.
Clearly, this is one of these questions which I want to jump off the stage in like a Patrick Swayze, like Dirty Dancing move of like, I have so much to say. We have mottos of, if you have a body, you're an athlete. We have mottos that say non-participation is not an option. We have to stop treating our bodies as opt-in things, and this is what we must do. This is who we are. We were born embodied. We will, I don't know if we die embodied, but we die disembodied. I don't know. That would have to, I'd have to like really think that one through. But you get what I'm saying. I just think that there's so much in today's world that we have learned is either privilege allows us the opportunity to opt in, non-privilege doesn't even give us access. And we need to switch that paradigm on its head. And like they've all said, we have to model it, which means we model it with our own bodies and our own families. We model it with our philanthropy and the institutions we choose to support. And we model it with our feet and how we vote in our communities. And so if we believe this, then we have to vote with our daughters and vote with our sons and vote with our money and vote with our bodies. So again, I would say to you as you leave this room, non-participation is not an option. And so if you believe it, then you have to start walking the talk. And that if you have a body, you're an athlete, and that functional movement is just as important as competitive movement.
I'd tag on to that too, that if you have a body, you have a relationship with nature. And so there's this piece here too of like the conflation of being an athlete with going outdoors. Like you have to be athletic to go outdoors. Something's a little confusing there to me. This afternoon I took a break from work and I went in my backyard and just lay on the ground. Like just lay there. I have a 1.5-year-old daughter. You know, it's like my relationship with outdoors has shifted so much in the past 2 years. You know, I'm not going out and rock climbing so much. I'm more like taking a very slow walk where she's getting to walk on the trail and we're sitting on every single rock and picking up every stone and then trading for sticks. and that's a relationship with outdoors and with my body and with her body and the body of the earth. So I just feel really compelled to name that as well, and that it's important work just to get each person in relationship like that, to wake up to that, to wake up to like, there's nature right down the street.
So a lot of women and girls report feeling the pressure to be perfect in everything that they do. The perfect students, the perfect friend, the perfect daughter, the perfect mother, the perfect teacher. Raise your hand if you've ever felt that pressure to be perfect. Okay. And if you're in the front, keep those up. If you're in the front, take a look. So this is a really very real pressure for girls that stays with them into adulthood. And we know that girls especially struggle with a beginner's mindset, and we see that unless they're really good at something, or pretty good when they start it, a lot of them quit or feel it's not worth trying, or it's too embarrassing. I can relate to this as I was trying to learn how to snowboard from my husband, who said, "Follow me," and like 5 concussions later, I was really embarrassed. That was our first date. So how do you feel, or how do you deal with the pressure to be perfect? And I'd love it if you could tell us about a time that you failed and what you did with that.
I have a great story from this summer. So in addition to racing, I also work full-time for a mountain bike manufacturer out of Golden called Yeti Cycles. And I also run Vita Mountain Bike Series, and I do additional media and PR. So I find myself often very overloaded. So I was going into the 6-day enduro mountain bike race up in interior BC, and I was so busy, I really didn't take the time to really check over my bike. So on the first day, third stage in, I had a brake failure, which which made me crash into a tree on a very steep section. It literally broke my bike in half, the top tube. It was carbon. And at first I was in disbelief, and that lasted about 10 seconds. And then I was kind of coming to grips with like, well, I'm the first day in. I am the PR person for the race. My job is to complete the race, write about this magical adventure, make people wish they were here. And at the end of it, I always like to include a little bit note of like, well, by the way, I was racing it and I got, 5th place or whatever. And on that first day, I realized I wasn't going to be able to complete the race. I pulled myself back together. I borrowed a bike for the next couple days. And on day 3, I took another big tumble, landed on my head, got a concussion. And at that point, I had to take a time out and reprioritize why I was there and what I was doing. And I really felt like I was coming up short because I had taken time away from my other work obligations, from Vita, from my next biggest event, the Yeti Tribe Gathering, which was happening the following week, to be there at the race. And here I was there, not even able to finish it, and not even able to say like, hey, this is what today's day was like. So I took some time to myself. I cried a lot. I went and got my bike fixed and reprioritized why I was there. And I went ahead and decided that I didn't have to finish every single stage to write a good report about the day. I was a journalist. I could sit there and interview people and ask them. I could do just enough of each day to make myself have a good time. And I finished up the week pretty beaten down, went on through the rest of my summer, and as my summer came to a close, I saw another 3-day race pop up in Revelstoke, BC, and I went ahead and signed up for it because I knew that the only way I was going to get better at riding that terrain and make it more second nature was to go back and face my fears. So I went back this Labor Day weekend and raced on some of the same trails, and they were completely different trails. Before I was staring down at really steep terrain and big rocks thinking, how am I going to get through this safely? How am I going to not crash? I might as well just jump off my bike and run here. I could see myself like dialing in the line, letting go of the brakes, and having the confidence to roll through it. So being able to return to the exact same site and experience it in a much less pressured way, I was coming off of that race a lot more successful. So you're going to crash, you're going to burn, you're going to have to get up, dust yourself off, straighten out the saddle, and try it again.
Have you ever failed?
Any other failures up there?
The human spirit. When I got into ultra marathons, I wasn't instantly successful. I did a 50K, which is about 31 miles. I did a 50-miler. I knew I was hooked on them, so then I decided I wanted to try 100 miles and signed up for a 100-mile race in Steamboat Springs. Kind of trained for it, thought I was doing all the right things. I recruited a bunch of friends and family to come in from all over the country, and they put in their own training to help me out with it. And I did this, started this 100-mile race, and I got to about mile 55, and I quit. I called it a day. I was whimpering on the trail. I was curled up on the side in a fetal position, and I just stopped wanting it. And I was really mad at myself afterwards and cried a lot. I was really disappointed and decided 2 things. 1, I really wanted the 100-mile distance, and 2, I was just going to backpedal a little bit and charge at it with a lot more intentionality. So I decided to make a better plan to do the exact same thing better, and it ended up, I circled back to that same race like 4 years later and ended up completing it. So deciding not to quit or deciding that I just wasn't for the 100-mile distance wasn't an option or the path that I took from it.
Oh, I have something to add because I'm going to tell a story about Courtney. Not that she failed, but an example of these amazing women who are doing, you know, at not collegiate ages, past collegiate ages, these amazing accomplishments physically. When Courtney decided to leave teaching because she couldn't professionally run and teach anymore, I can't imagine why not, but I was no longer day-to-day, and then we finally saw each other one day, and Courtney came up to me and said, hey, we haven't really talked about me leaving. And I, you know, just said to her, I think it's fantastic. And she actually looked at me, and here's this woman who's, you know, ranked #1 in the country, is getting endorsements and is living her dream. And she looked at me, and if you know Courtney, this is the most I've heard her talk, I think, in a total of 6 years. So, we have definitely spent a lot of quality time together. And she looked at me with that serious, really heartfelt look that Courtney has, and in a soft voice says, hey Liz, what if I fail? And I don't know if you remember the conversation in the front office of our middle school. And I just looked at her and I said, how could you ever consider yourself a failure? You've already won. Like, you've already achieved it. You're doing it. And it was just one of those moments where I think women can support each other and understand that this is something, whether you call it the imposter syndrome or you just call it a lack of confidence, that the best of us are doing this every day. And sisterhood and community is so, so vital. But that's my story about Courtney when you asked the question, Kim. I want to take it from a different perspective. I had my first baby at 39.5 and my second one 6 weeks before I turned 44. So I like to say that before I had those babies, I looked like I was from Boulder. I'm actually from New Jersey, so that works really well for me. But I couldn't birth my babies naturally. Both of them ended up being C-section. The second one was planned, but the first one was 32 hours of labor. And as a Division, as a Division I athlete and an easily accomplished athlete until the age of 40, not being able to birth my children was a huge failure for me. And when I think back about being the chief visionary officer about a venture that is about embodied living, that it took me until about 3 months ago, and all the social emotional stuff that had happened in my life that happens in everybody's lives, marriage, divorce, marriage, divorce, the fact that I forgot to lead with my body because I was so disappointed in it, that I was truly disappointed in my body at an older age as a mom. It took me about, I guess this is year 10 of the venture, to remember what it is that I spend all of my time pontificating about with humor, as you're experiencing, and I like this part. But it took me 10 years after that failure of my body to come back and say, hey Liz, you forgot. You have to lead with your body. And Courtney and everyone in the back of the room who's from Gals will tell you that if there's one person who never got to do movement at its most rigorous moments at Gals, it was always me. And that was a choice. And so even the best amongst us can give us all confidence that we're all going through the same thing. And I think the single gender atmosphere is about sisterhood. And if we truly take diverse sisterhood seriously, we'll all feel better about ourselves.
So it was mentioned, this statistic about collegiate level athletes. And we know about 96% of female CEOs were collegiate level athletes. Liz, you mentioned it. You just mentioned, again, being a collegiate athlete, you know, helping you deal with reconciling this sense of failure that you had. I'm curious if anyone else on the panel was a collegiate level athlete, and why do you think there's such a strong correlation between, you know, leadership in the business world and women in collegiate sports? Or not? Courtney, I think you want to start, right? You're not a CEO? Not yet.
Racing mountain and road bikes in college gave me a lot of routine and also allowed me to experience what it feels like to really push beyond your comfort zone. Sometimes I wonder, man, I wonder if I could go back and like physically push myself as hard as I did when I was racing road back in college. And you know, I do know that it's still in there, maybe in smaller doses, and I'm a little bit more selective on when it comes out. But you know, it gave me the ability to do things, and at the time I was willing to take the risk. And I think to be a good leader, you know, you have to be willing to take that risk and think outside of yourself and think about what it's doing for others. You know, when I'm referred to it kind of at the helm of the Vita mountain bike series, and I always remember that it's not just me who's doing it all, it's this whole collective force. So for me as a collegiate athlete, being on the cycling team was really important. It was an individual, yet it was a team sport. So you were out there racing on your own, but you knew that you were out there with the support of your team. And that's how I look at kind of the women's mountain bike community. We are one big unit and we're elevating each other to be stronger. So kind of tying back to being a collegiate athlete, it's the focus, getting outside of your comfort zone. For me, it was the routine and also having the advice from experts and coaches to help me along the way.
I didn't think I'd add this, but this just came to mind. I was not a collegiate athlete. I started climbing at 17, and that became a really important part of my life. But I did swim competitively from 5th grade to senior year of high school. And actually, one of the things that I would say, and hopefully this doesn't sound super weird, I think people will maybe relate, was just being like naked in the locker room with other girls was like really normalizing. Of like, and it's swimming, there's a lot, you know, you change in your swimsuit and you change out of it. And you're just like, oh, we all have bodies. Okay. And I think that actually was something that was really healthy for me to experience as a teen girl growing up.
Courtney says she's not a CEO, but she knows with me that the 4 principles of GALS are power, flexibility, focus, and balance. I think the reality is that athletes have a broader definition of femininity for themselves in which they find comfort in, and that allows them to focus on goals and outcomes. If you train with your body, you know that you train for something, you compete, and then you move to what is next. And I think that those are all valuable tools in the professional world. And I think, as Rachel Simmons, who's one of the founders of GLI, Girls Leadership Institute, will tell you, there's just simply an enormous potential in being a girl. And we have yet to tap that. But if we focus on some core principles that widen the definition of femininity, the more comfortable we are being women, and therefore the more comfortable we are being women everywhere. And so that, to me, is the understanding of why they are breaking barriers at record levels across industries.
So as I mentioned in the introduction about taking the shirt off at the creek, it seems that I'm not alone in that feeling of feeling free from gender expectations in the outdoors. REI's Force of Nature campaign, their research has indicated that 72% of the women they've polled feel free of gender expectations and the daily pressures in their life when they spend more time outdoors. So I'm curious if this is true for you, and if you'd like to share a little bit about, you know, what your experience was. Maybe you didn't fling your muddy t-shirt out the window, but did you have your own story to tell?
Is she asking us to take off our shirts? Because I'm not 100% sure.
Liz, you decide for yourself.
So when I am in the office at Yeti, we have a daily lunch ride from 11:30 to 1 p.m. And when I started working for Yeti back in 2008, I was the only woman going out on lunch rides. And at first, and I was young, I was 21 years old, and they're like, oh, Sally, because they forgot that my name was actually Sarah, so that's how I got my nickname, was Sally. Oh, Sally's gonna join us. And so, you know, they would make sure that, you know, I got off the trail and that I made it back to the factory and that they weren't like leaving me out there to be eaten by rattlesnakes. Now when I head out with the guys, it's a whole different playing ground. Often they're like, oh, no, today I'm on the B team, you go first. You know, they're often, I'm the one who's told to go first. And not because I'm faster than them, but on that given day, I might be riding or I might be riding stronger than they are. Or they just want to see my interpretation of the trail that day. Even just actually just yesterday, I've been on a travel tour lately. I was in Moab, Utah, and riding with a really large group, and it was a mixed group, and slowly the group got whittled down to, you know, I have to be back to my van by 2 p.m., so I'm going to go with these guys down the trail. And if any of you are familiar with a trail called Jackson's, it ends with some really steep, intimidating switchbacks. And I was riding with a guy who's a local there, and you know, I was letting him lead the whole way. I don't think he knew that I'd actually ridden the trail before, so and he'd kind of turn around and be like, do you know what's coming up? I'm like, oh, no, I'm fine. I'll just, you know, kind of play it by ear. And we get to the switchbacks, and inside, I'm thinking, I'm going to nail this, just right in front of him. And he does, and he kind of messes up the line, and I kind of wait because I want him to get out of the way. And then, sure enough, I come down and just very slowly, meticulously make my way down. And after that, it completely changed the dynamics of the rest of our ride out and back to the van. You know, I was getting like a fist bump and a high five. And before, I kind of felt like he was like, well, I guess you can come along with me. So, you know, when I'm outside, it really makes me feel like we are on an equal playing field. And I don't have a specific role and they don't have a specific role. I'm not looking for them to like show me what to do or to take care of me. Often those roles become reversed, and particularly if I'm out on a trail that they haven't been on, you know, I'm the leader and I'm showing them what we're doing and I'm calling out the shots. So for me, being in the outdoors really gives me the ability to kind of look or be on the same playing field as like my male counterparts and coworkers and colleagues, and also people I look up to.
I think for me, every time I go outside, there's usually a challenge involved of some sort, whether we want to, you know, top out on that crag or get to the top of the summit or get to the bottom of the mountain biking trail safely. There's always a challenge ahead, and I think every time I'm outside, I'm there with a team, and we're there together. So we want to make sure that we all get out safely. Hopefully we reach the top of the summit together before any weather rolls in. So I think that totally evens the playing field, is that there's always some sort of risk involved. And I think it's managed risk, it's calculated, and it's usually positive risk. But there's always some sort of risk. So as a team together, we want to work together to make sure that everyone's safe, that everyone's enjoying it, that we're all comfortable. And so I think it's less of who we are, and we kind of just work together. Everyone has different skill sets, and we kind of just work together to make sure that we can accomplish our goal and get out safely.
I found myself thinking about early experiences learning to climb. And in high school, I had the opportunity to go on a trip to Red Rocks, Nevada, and actually got to do a multi-pitch climb with the guide, who was a man, and also someone I really looked up to and learned a lot from. And I remember distinctly on the second pitch of this climb called Dark Shadows, it's really well known and beautiful, thinking, this is amazing, and I can always hang out as the follower and never have to take any risks. This is awesome. And that's what I'm gonna do. That's how I'm gonna do climbing, and how that provided me with this really comfortable bubble. And so and that was at 17. And so over the years, as I started climbing in the gym and getting better at movement and meeting different people to climb with, I found myself growing curious about what it meant to take on the sharp end, what it meant to be the leader at the top of the rope, bringing the rope up. And I ended up finding various female role models who led, and then watching them, and then suddenly it just clicked for me of like, oh, I could do that. She's doing that right now. And so I think one of the things for me, what I found, learning to lead and lead climb, trad climbing in particular, is that the sort of trust that I get to have in myself, being high up on the rock and with this technical gear and deciding, there's no one else here I can ask for advice. Like I have to say, actually I think a cam placement will work here, and here's why, and I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to make the next move. Like having that experience with myself in relationship with me and my own competency is incredible, and it's so quieting. You know, it's like there's no other babble going on during those moments, and that's really precious. And I think that's one of the things, you know, and I love also, as I said, just sitting in the dirt. But for climbing in particular as an outdoor passion, that's what it's really brought for me. And it doesn't have to be on something terribly crazy. It can be on something, you know, that's not necessarily pushing my limits, but still to find that quietude and a presence with my own competency. And that's one of the reasons Women's Wilderness really features rock climbing as one of our skills, core skills we teach women and girls.
Okay, so I've got a couple questions for you as individuals or pairs. So I think I'll start with Courtney, because I like that Liz is picking on her a little bit. Just jump on that train. So Courtney, I would love to get your opinion on the term getting chicked. And then I've got a follow-up question. So as many of you know, the term getting chicked refers to when a male competitor is passed or outperformed by a female counterpart. This is a term in the ultra running world quite a bit. So if used in a conversation, it might sound something like this. Hey dude, I saw you got chicked by Courtney DeWalter at mile 50. Yeah, whatever dude. Everyone gets chicked by Courtney DeWalter. Like, literally everyone gets chicked by Courtney DeWalter. So, Courtney, what is your take on this term? Is this a compliment? Is this an insult?
I think for ultra running, we should absolutely take it as a compliment. I think we are on the same playing field in those longer races with the men, and when I'm at the starting line of a race, all of them are my competition. I don't care if they're a man or a woman. So yeah, I will try and chick them all every single time.
So my follow-up question is, we see the gender performance gap between men and women decreasing with the longer distance. You know, that women actually start to outperform men in some of the longest events. You are a prime example of this, winning the Moab 200 recently, running 238 miles. It's not a 200, I don't know why they call it that. But you finished over 10 hours ahead, from what I understand, of the next male finisher. What is happening out there?
What is,
Yeah, can you explain yourself? What do you think about the gender gap decreasing? Like, what is it about women that at the longest distances, is there something else about that's happening that you can shed light on?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about it a little bit before, but our brains are really powerful, and so as the distances become longer, the physical differences between the male and the female body become less important, and it's more about just that mental fortitude or determination. And so I think that is why women, and there's plenty of women all over the United States overall winning these ultra-marathon races. As we get more women into trail running, which we need to do as well, then we're going to start to see, it's going to become a lot less shocking when there's an overall female winner of a race.
So you have the strongest brain on the planet.
I mean, we all do, right?
Okay. Well, yours goes 238 miles, but no, thank you for that. So Lori, I'd love to ask you this next question. So what is one thing you'd like to see the outdoor industry do more or less of to support women in the outdoors?
What could we do more or less of for women in the outdoors? I mean, I think one thing that we can all do more of, and this is for both men and women, is just to be mentors and to provide the space for young, well, any woman, but especially young women to see themselves in a role in the outdoor industry and give them this path to work up into it and find pathways to do that. And one organization who's not here that I totally want to mention is Camber Outdoors, and they're in Boulder as well. And they work specifically in professional outdoor industry companies to get women into the middle management and upper management positions. So some people are doing that, but I think the biggest thing is everyone can be a mentor to these women, whether they're in the industry or not.
Awesome, thank you so much. So my next question is for you, Liz. Can you just walk us through a typical day for a student at GALS? Like, what does it look like?
I think the overall feeling that you'll get with it walking you through, because there's a lot of things that are hidden in the experience, but what you're going to get is a middle school and a high school experience that is fun, that is active, and has an extraordinary amount of running in the hallways. So I think that's the feeling that you get, and happy middle school girls. So I don't know if that sounds weird to most of you, but I think the way we grew up, we were told that just doesn't happen, but it does. You start your day with movement because brain science says that developing minds, which are pretty much until the age of 21, don't awaken until 10 in the morning, and yet schools are putting kids in classes earlier than that. So we put off core classes as long as possible, but we jumpstart the brain with the body. It does not look like, I'm just going to go just looking at the age here, my gym class. I won't account for most of your gym classes, but my gym classes didn't look like this. The other piece of movement is that teachers are all running movement. We don't have gym teachers or movement teachers. All of the teachers are doing it because if it's good for kids' brains and it's good for adult brains, then we should all be doing it. Kids rotate their classes every day, so every Monday is the same, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are different schedules based on the brain science that says if you raise your heartbeat between 40 to 80% of its capacity, there's a 2.5-hour window in which the brain is most supple to intake information. Therefore, if we're having real movement classes, then we want to be rotating classes so that the brains and bodies aren't getting used to taking math always at the end of the day or math only always after movement. So we rotate classes every day. In there is an entire assumption that all kids are assigned a wellness team. It's an iteration of an advisory, so kids are rotating through their wellness teams in which they do teamwork and goal setting and mindset all year long. Lots of crazy, crazy games. Mighty Mighty Scoop Noodle Challenge, things like that. So, and in there is a class that gets as much time as all core subjects. So if you have a class that's your core subjects are 62 minutes long, meaning math, science, social studies, and language arts, at GALS you get an additional core class every day for 62 minutes called the GALS series, in which we deconstruct the philosophical framework on which the school was built. The social, emotional, relational realities, meaning you study identity, you study mood, you study feelings, you study emotion, you study community, you study civics, you study somebody yells something out in the back. Media literacy, leadership, emotional intelligence, fitness, nutrition, cognitive awareness, conative awareness assessments, all those things happen in that class. So you are not only dealing with your physical body during the day, for 7 years, 62 minutes a day, 5 days a week, you are studying how to be fully yourselves. And then there's math, science, social studies, and language arts. Oh yeah, we do that too.
Awesome, incredible, thank you. So Sarah, my next question is for you. You are a savvy entrepreneur and have turned your passions into your career. So what is one piece of advice you have for others looking to do the same?
Sometimes you just have to take the leap. And no matter how calculated or how many calculations you've done and how much preparation, and if you've done your homework and your research or you've trained for it, it sometimes comes down to that moment, and it can be very decisive. And you know, in sport, it can be a split second. Making a big business decision, you have to have a firm feeling to head in that direction, and every cell in your body has to be in alignment in order to have you move forward with the best intentions. But yes, sometimes it just comes down to taking the leap, and it is scary. I've had to do it many times, both in, you know, my racing career, quite literally, and also running a business and coming up against barriers and challenges, and you know, trying to seek out a solution and just know that that's the best motion going forward. So the leap is scary, but you can do it.
Awesome. So Emily, you have worked with women and girls in several outdoor and backcountry settings for almost 20 years. You've talked a little bit about this, but if you could explain more about the impact of women learning or growing their outdoor skill set from other women, how would you describe the importance of that piece?
Oh gosh, you told me you were going to ask me this, and still I'm like, oh, wow, that's like a dissertation. Whew, give me a second here. So we have qualitative and quantitative data. That's sort of a boring way to begin this. But it's true. You know, let's just talk about the stats to start out. They're wild. Girls come off our courses saying that like 98% of them feel more deeply connected to the outdoors. Girls come off of our courses saying that they're, you know, 80% of them feel more comfortable and confident in their bodies. Girls come off of our courses, like 95% of them saying that they feel more comfortable taking on challenges, or that they believe that they could imagine themselves as a leader, that that's an identity they could take on. So just the stats alone are pretty mind-blowing. Then like the pieces that really give the human background to that I love is talking to them in person. You know, I have a group of 8 girls who are all in high school who have all taken 2 or more courses with us. You know, these are like 8-day backpacking and rock climbing summer courses. And the things they say just blow my mind. You know, things like, gosh, I now find in school I'm less afraid to talk to new people. Or things like, you know, in school, I heard this group of boys calling girls by a name that's derogatory, and I want to talk more about how to address that. Like, they need these spaces so badly. They want to talk about these topics, and that these are things they got to talk about while on their Women's Wilderness course. And so I think it's fueling these conversations that are already going on in their heads and giving them safe places to have them. It's just amazing to me. We have one girl who was on 4 or 5 courses, all on financial aid through our program, as she went from a kid whose mom was shocked that she wanted to do anything outdoors. She was like, I don't know, the woman who gave the presentation seemed cool. I'm just gonna give this a shot. And so she went out on a day course with us, and then ended up, you know, years later being a high school mentor, out with younger girls and mentoring them through, like, here's how to use a P-rag. This is how you are a woman and have your period in the backcountry. So super, super cool just seeing these girls who start not identifying as outdoors girls going to a place where they're like, yeah, this is something I love and care about. I'd say similar stuff for women too. You know, it's really the themes are, the threads run true. You know, we're talking about women feeling more empowered to take on challenges, and women feeling like, oh, I could lead that climb, like seeing possibility for themselves. So it's really the greatest gift of running the organization, is seeing the impact.
Awesome. Okay, just a couple more questions here. Liz, I'm going to bounce back over to you. Let's start a social media frenzy. What's your hashtag? keep it PG-13 maybe?
The clean tag is hashtag lead with your body.
All right, everybody got that? Hashtag lead with your body. So go take a picture with Liz later. Hashtag lead with your body. All right, so next question is for Courtney and Sarah. I'm hoping the two of you can really settle something for us once and for all. I know there might be an official answer to this, but I want you to tell me what you think the answer should be. The should, okay? Who is the right of way on a trail? A mountain biker? A trail runner? Or the dude with a dog on a flexi leash?
I think if we're going by IMBA's, the International Mountain Bike Association rules,
that's official.
It's going to be the guy with his dog on the leash.
Really?
Over the trail runner. I think so.
It's a long, like, flexi leash. Like, it's
Dog's just, yeah. But put it this way, when I'm on my bike and I am climbing up a section of trail and I see a mountain biker coming down, even though I'm climbing and I have the right of way, if I were in their shoes, I would want to be able to enjoy the entire downhill, so I happily go to the side. But I try to think about the other person's experience and what would they most enjoy.
Oh, there's a grimace.
No, it's all great. I mean, what is it? Mountain bikers yield to hikers who yield to horses.
Everyone yields to the horses. Even the dog on the flexi leash.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's really easy for runners and hikers to step to the side. So oftentimes, if there's a mountain biker, I do step to the side because, especially if they're climbing, which maybe now I should do it on the downhills too. I'm always like, don't break your momentum. Like, keep going. So I usually step to the side.
You're so nice. Okay, so next question. I think we just achieved world peace there, by the way. Lori and Emily, this is one of those hard-hitting questions for the two of you to explain to us. Can bears smell menstruation?
You worded it slightly differently.
Oh, sorry. Can bears smell the menstruation?
Oh.
That's not how I work. No.
Maybe they can. I don't know, but it does not matter. It is not a threat. I've worked year-round for like 15 years of my life outdoors. I want to do a little math here. I've probably had at least 100 periods, menstruations in the backcountry. And I have never, ever had contact with a bear because of that. Ever.
Yeah, no contact with bears yet. I have no research to back this up other than I'm still here.
All right. I think we've definitely made at least a little bit of noise tonight and amplified the voice of women and girls in the outdoor community. So again, thank you to REI and the Force of Nature. Again, all of these organizations are represented here in the back of the room. I encourage you to check out the amazing resources and the different opportunities they'll offer you to connect to one another, to connect to the outdoors, to connect to yourself.